Welcome to our very first premiere episode of Buried in Horror. I am Austin, and I'm joined here with one of my bestest of bestesses,
Cameron.
Cameron. And we are here today to talk all about The Farm from 2018, this horror mystery film. But first, let's delve into a little bit about ourselves so you guys can get to know us. So, I'm Austin. I am from Florida and I am a huge horror fanatic, whether it be slashers, crappy B movies, paranormal flicks, anything like that will get me going. My first experience with horror, I remember vividly watching pieces of it and seeing Tim Curry's Pennywise ingrained in my brain, and I can never look at that clown the same ever again. I think that is one of the most horrific uh, figures in my mental memory as a child that still scars me to this very day seeing that clown. Cameron, what about you?
Well, I'm Cameron. I am your co-host. So my very first experience in horror, I was 2 years old, and I watched Chucky with my dad, and it freaked the hell out of me. It scarred me for life when it came to dolls and toys. Um, so every night I would have to turn my doll or toy around so it wasn't looking at me because it freaked me out. So after that, I tried staying away from horror because it freaked me out so much as a kid. But I'd say within the past 5 years specifically, I have grown to really appreciate horror in the genre, and slowly but surely I've been really interested and fascinated with it. Hence why I'm watching stuff like The Farm now, which is kind of underground, because I've watched most of the mainstream horror like Nightmare on
Yeah.
Elm Street, Child's Play, and whatnot. So we're digging into the real hidden gems.
Oh yeah, these are the potatoes underground that we are going to be talking about. Like, we are going to be pulling these suckers right on out of the ground
Oh yeah.
and mashing them down. So you talked about Child's Play. Do you now are you able to just watch Child's Play and enjoy it? Or are you still a little kind of worked off by this little doll?
I will always be haunted by that little shit. But I absolutely love the franchise. The creator of it, Don Mancini, has done such a great job with it and incorporating like LGBTQ in it as well. He's done a
For
great
sure.
job with that. With in the show itself too, incorporating parts from his life and just putting a little bit of horror spin onto it as well has been really interesting. And just the characters in it are also just so well like created. Like
Yeah, a
Tiffany
lot of the early
Valentine
ones.
is an instant hit, and Chucky gave people nightmares in the 80s and 90s. So I think it's one of the best um, series out there. Not just in terms of horror, but in general in terms of like movies. I think it's phenomenal. So yeah, I can look back at it now because Chucky's just he's just a funny little guy now. You know?
He's a funny little redhead dude, and
Yeah.
he'll always be Chuck, and
Yeah.
he won't give any fucks.
At first he was only creepy, but then he just added some humor in there like Freddy Krueger, and I liked him now.
Yeah, the originals are definitely 100 times different than what has come out now with Chucky.
Yeah.
And through all of his iterations, I think there is something that is special about that character and just the immensely great work that Don had done, as well as all the actors and everyone in those films.
Oh,
So yeah,
absolutely.
we won't be talking about Child's Play anytime soon, because
What
that
about?
movie is a little bit higher up, I think, than The Farm that we're going to be talking
Oh,
about.
absolutely. What about you and Pennywise and It though? What about you? Are you able to rewatch those now with Tim Curry and be like
you
freaked out still,
know,
or do you find it hilarious?
I have not touched or opened the original It, and I don't even think I've willingly never have opened it after seeing that face of the white face, the red hair.
Mm.
And for me, it's not a go. I have seen the remake of it, only the first part. I never watched the second part all the way
Mm.
because of the opening seems just very hard to get through, and it's a choice made there.
Mm-hmm.
So no desires to really open it anytime soon.
That's fair.
Um, but here we are. Another big thing that is we both share is Dead by Daylight. We met by playing through some mutual friends, and uh, now this man is one of my inseparable pieces that I will annoy day in and day out. I love you so much. I enjoy the friendship that we
Aw,
have, and I'm so excited to be able to
thanks.
do this with you and share all this experience with you and only build our friendship up from here. So that is great. Dead by Daylight,
The
one of my
feeling is
favorite
mutual.
all-time games. Uh, if you play, I am a big Felix Richter main, as well as the Clown, and enjoying some doggy play with the Houndmaster.
Hmm. I also play a lot. I've been playing since 2018, and I'm a Steve main because God, that man is hilarious. And Joe Curie is hot. What? Who said that? Um, but in terms of killer, I play a wide variety of the killers, so it's hard to say which one I really like the most. But I'd say I still prefer Chucky, believe it or not. The little shit that gave me horrors, I think he's the most fun to play.
I think he is definitely super fun. He has
Mm-hmm.
some really fun voice lines in there, and the integration with Tiffany Valentine as a
Oh,
alternate
yeah.
skin is also super duper cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah. So are you ready to get into what we're all here to love and adore?
Absolutely.
Here we are at The Farm, a 2018 film, horror mystery. Originally, it was released on April 20th, 2018 at the Overlook Film Festival. For all of you who are avid fans of the Overlook Film Festival, no? All right. Well, this, I just learned, is a thing that's annually held in Louisiana. Um, so originally came out then, but it didn't get a theatrical release technically throughout the US until December 19th of 2019. Which depending on when this is getting posted, could be a possible, little anniversary for the film itself. The runtime of this film was just 80 minutes, including 7 kills throughout this film. The director is Hans Schernwar.
Sternvard.
Schernwar, I'm very good at that. He's a Swedish filmmaker who has actually been living in Los Angeles. His first film, uh, his first the farm is his first film, sorry,
Part of his
that
own
was actually
production
produced
company.
through his own film production company. He also has worked notably on some series through Crypt TV, known as Crypt Fables. And I know you did a little bit more of a delve into the Crypt Fables. Is there anything that you can tell us about those?
The Crypt Fables is one of my favorite series that has been made by Crypt TV. If you've seen their Mira Mira episode or Rapunzel, it's really freaky and creative how they're able to come up with stuff like that. Um, but I won't go like into detail about it. Like I highly recommend going in blind with it because it is an amazing first time watch for those. I would say like it's one of the better shorts you will find on YouTube. And the fact that you can watch it for free as well is just, whew, can't beat it.
Heck yeah. Maybe one day we can cover some of those Crypt Fables or some Crypt TV episodes. That'd be pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So some of our notable actors, there's not many of them actually. There's quite a number of unnamed actors, but there's a few I'd say main characters. You got Nora Yesian, starred as a leading lady in this film. She plays a woman also named Nora, who is completing paranoid and who just wants to get home the whole movie. You got side's favorite Alec Gaylord as
Yeah.
the secondary protagonist in this film. He also happens to play somebody named Alec. He's an outgoing guy. He tries to look on the bright side of things, and he wants to protect Nora from any danger that might occur in this. You got Ken Bala, who is the main antagonist of the film. Bullock is a very when I first saw him on screen, we're going to talk about him a lot more, but he kind of really made a presence, known that he was there
Oh yeah.
for me personally. He was a very distinguished character.
Hmm.
He is the man who plays the landlord, the leader of a business cult that shows no mercy. He runs the farm and just about everything about the operation. He knows, and he treats people not as human, but more as meat. The film only had a budget of 5 million, which is I think pretty low. Um,
Yeah.
it was distributed through Red Hound Films.
It's really a low budget for a film made in 2018. Like, I'd say if this were like
Yeah,
maybe 2000, it'd seem a little bit better, but 2018, that is like minuscule. It's almost nothing.
yeah.
So, credit where credit's due. It might not be the perfect movie, but with the budget they had, I'd say they did a pretty good job with what they had.
So the movie, general overview is these people take a wrong turn on a motorway. They decide to stop for some food at a roadside diner, uh, and then they ask at a gas station where the nearest place is to, you know, spend the night because Alex is tired from driving, and they eventually get kidnapped and imprisoned by these farmers. Um, and yeah, so the movie opens. Nora and Alec are driving through the countryside. They want to pull over at a way station because Nora needs to go to the potty room. However, once they pull up, they find it closed. This way station actually is closed like 3 days of the week. It's closed on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and then operates like partially the other days remaining. So they are like banging around the door, looking around the building, and Nora just really has to go to the bathroom. Originally, Alex suggested that they just pull over on the side of the road and she take a piss, but she's like, no, 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 I can't do that. I gotta go to a bathroom.
I must be
But here we
privileged
are.
like that.
Nora, is walking around the side of the building, she's trying to find a place to go to the bathroom. She happens to find this discarded wallet and cell phone at the ground. She looks over it. She thinks it's kind of a little strange, but she just sits back down on the ground, and then she just pulls her pants down and takes her piss. And I'm like, all this work, and this girl's gonna take a piss out in the public, regardless.
Yeah, right next to like
But
the abandoned tent,
right,
nonetheless.
yeah. So the camera starts like panning outwards, and then we see like a human remains or the skull,
Yeah,
kind of hidden behind some tall grass that you can't really see from the angle she's
yeah.
squatting at. um, so she finishes her piss and she heads back to the car. And Nora decides to, mention like, hey, I found like this stuff outside. Like there was a tent and some a cell phone and wallet. I can't believe people just like leave their stuff all over the place. Like that's crazy.
If I recall, I don't think she mentioned that it was a wallet and a phone. She just said people left their stuff there.
Yeah,
Like,
people that throw stuff there. I can't believe they did
yeah, that's
that.
crazy that you wouldn't mention someone left their wallet and phone. Like,
Yeah,
what? So, off the bat, just something a person
something's
probably
just
wouldn't actually do in real life. Like, if you find
yeah.
an abandoned phone and wallet next to a tent, you're gonna take that and try and bring it to a near police station. You know? Like,
That's the logical way of thinking.
but this is a
But
horror movie.
this is a horror movie, and all that she really says is, "Yeah, I wish that you came with me to see this abandoned camp, and so you can see all this stuff people just like left behind. I can't believe
Mm,
it." And I'm also kind of just curious about like in the next shot, they're in the car and they're driving through like this desert, and the camera again is like panning back, and there's this pile of like fish carcasses like out in the middle of the desert. So I'm like wondering where are these? Where was there a lake here? Like what happened to this like area where now there's just like animal bones hanging out?
mm.
So um,
Yeah, it's very
so
confusing on what it's just doing there.
so yeah, Alec he wasn't really too worried about what she was talking about. He was just kind of worried about now running out of gas. Um, and they continue driving to look for. a gas station because he says this one of these roads, this should be, a gas station every couple of miles because people got to get gas.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't end up finding gas next.
Oh, yeah, they most certainly don't. I believe
So,
they that's when they encounter a woman on the side of the road and her car has
yes,
died. Yeah.
yes, the
And
woman with the very typical grandma gown.
yeah, and let me just say before you get into it, the encounter these two are about to have is one of the most unrealistic encounters I've seen in a horror movie in a while. And that's saying something because I recently watched Thanksgiving again.
Yeah.
So,
So yeah, so Alec and Nora are driving, and there's this woman standing out of a car in a blue nightgown kind of thing, and she has her hood popped open. She's just standing there.
yeah.
Okay, standing there. I mean, and mind you, this place that they just visited, everything was closed. It was desolated. There's just a random woman standing there in the middle of the road. So Alec and Nora, as good Samaritans they are, they decide to stop the car and be like, "Hey, what's going on?" And she says, "I don't know. It died all of a sudden. How am I supposed to know?" Yeah, do that. Which is the weirdest of lines. Like, well, what? So Alec decides to offer her some help, and Alec moves the car a little bit over to, get the jumper cables out
Yeah.
and start doing that to the car. And Nora, walks on over to the lady, and she's like, "So where's the ring?" And Nora's taken back. She's like, "I'm sorry." She's like, "Well, where's the ring? He's not your brother, is he?" And she's like, "No, like, what's any of your business?" And then she just begins like insulting her,
Like you're
both
standing
ways,
here, you're
honestly.
making it my business.
Yeah. So and Nora's like, "Well, we're just trying to help you," and she's like, "No, like this boyfriend of yours, he ain't much help. He doesn't know what he's doing." And there's Alec over there with his little jumper cables in his hands, like, "Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know." And I'm like, this guy didn't even put the jumper cables on the car. Um, so there isn't really much of an interaction past that part of her just asking about why she's not married and their relationship with each other.
Yeah.
Which, spoiler alert, this lady never appears or is mentioned ever again in this
Yeah,
movie.
it's a really weird thing to throw in the movie just for it to never be brought up again. At least with the gas station or the way station where you see the missing stuff, at least it gives like an eerie vibe and sets the tone for the movie.
Yeah,
But with this encounter with the woman who has a dead car on the road, like nothing happens, nothing comes of it. Like even when they get back in the car and start driving off again, nothing happens in their conversation that's notable. Like it's a big complaint I have is just there's some really useless things that happen in the first portion of the movie. Like you could completely remove that scene and just put more of the stuff later on into it. You don't have
yeah,
to have this useless character in it. It's just like a waste of 5 minutes.
yeah, for sure, and
Yeah.
part of their budget.
Right.
So as I mentioned, they end up leaving. They didn't fix the car. She just starts kind of yelling, belching at them as they're driving off. And along their way to the next stop to go they find a diner and they are hungry. Um, so they head inside and they're greeted by a waitress who seems to be like the most normal of the movie so far.
Yeah.
And the first thing that she says when Nora and Alec sit down is, "Aren't you young and tender?" Which I feel like is a little bit
Yeah.
foreshadowing to potentially what happens in this film. Um, the biggest thing being like, is this the woman knowingly in on what this is like what's happening, or is this just like a weird kind of quirky old woman?
The next line she says after telling her to just get a burger at the diner about the cheese, where she says, "Can I have
Yes,
cheese on my burger?" And she says, "Oh, I'll go check." That kind of makes me feel like she's gonna be,
like, do you
part of
guys not have
something later
cheese?
on. Yeah. I
Like,
think you know where I'm going with this, where they would have to check to see if they have cheese, or might need to get a new shipment from a certain place, you know.
yeah, yeah. Um, so before they get the meal, we get a little shot of the burger being prepared. They both get burgers. Spoiler alert, because the waitress recommended them. She says,
Mm-hmm.
"You're at a diner, you get a burger."
Mm-hmm.
So they both have burgers with bacon, and there's a shot of the bacon and the burger sizzling on the stove. Which I was always like, is that also kind of a like a little eye in on what's happening? But we'll talk
Right.
about that a little bit more as well as the movie goes through. Um, they get the burger, they have their food, they eat it. Um, and Alec notices a male patron staring at them from across the diner. He's sitting at the the countertop, like looking at a small television that's not turned on.
Mm.
And he kind of feels weird about it, so he's like, "Oh yeah, let's get out of here." And in my head, I'm like, "Did they pay for the meal? Like, I didn't see the rest of the interaction." But they're heading out to leave the diner, and Nora goes to the door. And man's like, "It's not safe here. Not like it's not safe here." And Nora's just like, "What? What? Oh my god!" She kind of just shrugs it off,
Right.
and they just leave the diner. Uh, Alec was a little concerned, which is surprising because he wasn't concerned earlier about the camp.
Yeah, that
But
or the lady
Nora
bugging
this
him.
time, they kind of just like flipped roles. So Nora now is just like, oh yeah, he's just a weird guy. Like, don't mind him, no business.
Right.
So they head on off down to their next adventure. They finally are stopping at the gas station to fill their car up. Um, and they meet a character. His name is Andrew. He is the gas station attendant. Nora heads in first. She's kind of like checking out the place, looking at the sunglasses. Um, and Alec comes up and asks him like, "Oh, like fill me up." And they spend $58.40 on gas and sunglasses, which I feel like is a little wild. They don't have a big car, but I made a note about it. And Alec asks the cashier for a place to lodge at. At first he's like, "Oh, where's like the nearest like bed and breakfast?" And Andrew, he's a little different. He doesn't really understand what they're saying until they kind of clarify, like, "Oh yeah, we want a place to stay, a hostel, whatever." He's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah." Well, there's a cabin up, the road. And this person is, rents the cabins out, so you should go and check that out. It's like, "Oh, cool. Like, how far up the road it is." He's like, "Oh, yeah, about 20 miles. You can't miss it." Um, so they head back into their car and they start talking about this cabin. Nora doesn't want to stay at the cabin. She just wants to drive home. Doesn't want to stop at these strange cabins. But Alex complains that he's super duper sleepy and he wants to go rest and, you know, rejuvenate himself.
Hmm.
Super duper complaining people.
Right. It's
Then
like if
proceeds
you want to
the.
just go home, then she can just drive instead.
Yeah,
But
I don't know why Nora can't drive.
that'd be too simple.
Yeah, she can't drive. It's absolutely a no no.
Yeah.
Uh, then commences a long road sequence. I feel like it takes like 2 minutes of the film. It's just like the camera
Right.
watching this windy road, and there's like, all stock images and stuff. So after this long windy road sequence, they finally get to the cabins. They get out the car. Alec is like, "Wow, there's a lot of cars here. Like, and none of them are police cars." which I didn't really understand that comment. I don't
Yeah,
know if
I don't
you.
understand it either.
Yeah, I didn't know what that meant. If
Yeah,
it was like it's a good place because it doesn't have police cars out in front of it, maybe.
maybe. I have no idea.
Of course, yeah. So of course they get to this rustic cabin. It's like kind of decrepit. It looks like you're going to a camp. Nora, of course, is creeped out by the place as she would be, thinking that it's empty because they head inside and they don't find anybody. They're kind of just walking around, and then they finally head upstairs, and there's a man there. And this man is what we will call the landlord of the cabins.
It's the only name
Uh,
he's ever referred to as in the
it's
film.
the only name. He doesn't have an actual legal name. His first name
Exactly.
is the, his last name is Landlord. Um, and he turns around and he has kind of a crooked face. So it kind of takes, of course, Nora off guard, and she's like, "Oh God, what?" But he greets them. He talks to them about renting a cabin. He's like, "Oh yeah, people come here all the time. Like people stop. I rent the cabins out." He does talk about how he's also from LA as well, and that he was once driving through this town place and stopped at these cabins and also stayed. And then eventually, or he asked for, like, he wanted to work there by fixing the cabins up and whatnot. Um, and then I forgot what her name was. Do you remember who the previous owner?
I forget what her name was. He referred to as Mrs. Something.
Yeah, so he took over the property from Mrs. Something. She passed away 4 years ago to that date.
Mm,
Um, and he's been in charge of the place ever since.
yeah.
Um, so he was talking to Alec in conversation, and Nora decides to be a little butt ahead and be like, "Oh, we're really tired. Can you go?" Basically,
Yeah, just shoes him out.
and he's like, uh, "Oh yeah." Well, he eventually leaves.
Mm,
Alec of course was like, "What the heck? Why did you do that? Like we were just talking. Like he's a nice guy. He wants to talk to people. Blah 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 blah." But she's like, "Oh no, I don't feel like something's off about him. He's weird."
right.
The moral of the story here is Nora finds everyone who's not herself weird.
Hmm.
Um, and then, of course, again, another camera panning back, and then you see in the cabin that they're in, the top bunk of the bed is bloodstained.
Mm.
So something happened in that bed. The man did not clean it up. Um, so that night they are snoodling in the bed. I don't even know if they're in the same bed because I don't see both of them in the shot, but we're
Mm.
gonna believe that they're in the bed.
Yeah, let's just say they
Um,
are
and of
for
course,
continuity.
another camera panning back, and there is a man underneath
Underneath. Yeah.
their bed, which is super duper creepy. That
How the
he is
fuck did he
just
get there?
full back laid on the like on the ground upwards, wearing a sheep mask.
I'm just confused on
Uh,
when he was able to get under there.
he was able to bob up black sheep and get under there.
Oh, not that Bob.
So he kind of quietly gets himself out from underneath the bed and stands up, looming over them as they are sleeping, which is just makes me kind of like shiver, cringe, just like it's
Hmm.
gross. And then the shot goes off, and we have a new shot, and it's the desert with a crumbled building of some sort, and we see Nora waking up, finding herself in this wire dog cage. First off, I don't know if anything had gone through your head about why is this one cage and this one weird, decrepit, broken building? Like, is that not weird?
It is. I just am confused why they decided to put her there. Like the
Right, I'm like,
cage, like
wouldn't
they
you
put
just
it.
put her?
Yeah, like they put everyone in a cage, but I'm just confused on why they just put her there. Because they end up
Like,
just taking her to a building close by to do, you know, another thing with her. So why not
yeah,
just bring her and cage her up in that building to begin with? You know,
yeah, I
I'd prefer
that
you
I did
not
not.
cage them at all, but
Right, but
just
for caging
yeah,
them, I mean, put them in a place where it's easy for you to continue your caging thing.
exactly.
So she wakes up, she finds herself here, she is panicking, she's calling out for Alec. No one responds, but a man with a goat mask on, thumping her cage with like this giant stick.
Yeah.
And then he disappears again. Um, Nora then she sees a rock outside the cage. She tries to squeeze her hand through the mesh and to grab that rock. I'm assuming to
Break the
bash
lock
the
of the
lock.
yeah.
The man he then returns with another man, and guess what? He's wearing a cow mask. They then pour like some canister over her in the cage. I don't know what's in that canister
Yeah, I don't
though.
know.
I'm assuming maybe it knocked her out, made her go to sleep. It doesn't really specify what
It was
happens.
easily gasoline and the fumes knocked her out. That's why the one way
He,
station is closed because they have all the
that's the,
gasoline.
they have all the gasoline. It took all the gasoline.
Yeah,
So
easily.
again, the shot goes out to black and comes back again, and Nora is now woken up, or not woken up,
The
but she
Nora.
awakens in in a barn now with her herself strapped to a chair with her legs spread open,
Yeah,
which
that
is
was.
very weirdy stuff going on.
Yeah.
Um, we then see someone with a rabbit mask, which looks like to be a female uh person in this now. Um, who then comes over and has this giant like tube with a little squeezy ball
hmm
on it, and
We
decides
all
to
know.
try to forcibly inseminate Nora with this, like
hmm
basting her. Um,
It's giving Seed of Chucky,
it's giving it
except less
back
comical.
right. Nora is then pulled to a cart and sees other masked men and women doing various chores around this farm. She's in her cage again. She's one of them butchering a male corpse. Um, and then after that, she's taken to another barn with other females and locked inside of a stable. So then we have the other side of the story where now we get to see Alec again, and he's waking up. But he's stripped of all of his clothes, and he is also ball gagged.
hmm
However, he's not alone. He's in a barn with other men. He watches as some of the masked men come in, bashing uh, two of the other men who are in cages over the head with hammers, um, which they brought in like a rope to like keep them still while they bash them over the head, which is pretty crazy.
Giving them the Leatherface
They
treatment.
kind of go out real easily. They're like,
Yeah.
um, Alec attempts to escape, which I mean, what's the point of trying to resist and do that right now? Because you don't know where the heck you are.
And that, plus there's a
He's
bunch of people around.
yeah. But again, he's unsuccessful in this, and he's also knocked out. Uh, so then these masked men have a cart, and they decide to put all of their bodies stacked up on top of this trolley to bring them to a slaughterhouse.
Yep.
So then it's kind of revealed to you that this is a compound that's farming people, which can be kind of a metaphor for the way that we are farming in a sense. I think that was a little bit of a stretch, but
Yeah.
you see a bunch of people, they're all working, they're silent, they don't talk. they're all just wearing various animal masks. The livestock, of course, being the humans, um, and the men are being captured and slaughtered for their meat, just like a cow would be, while the female are being raised for milk.
Hmm.
So we learn from a conversation that the landlord is having on the phone that he is actually supplying a catering service,
Which I thought was
which
kind of funny at first. I'm gonna be
I
honest.
I think that is a very like interesting concept
Very
that I would have liked some like
for them to
photo,
expand
like
on. Yeah,
yeah. So he, um so the landlord has taken an order that requires more meat than what they have available. So they decide that they need to kill one of their dairy livestock as well. Um, where Then we get to go to the dairy barn, where there's several women lactating in their stables.
and they're also gagged.
Yet they are also
Yeah,
gagged. And there's also one that has a infant, a baby.
yep, a newborn.
Um, yeah. Um, the landlord he's reviewing their production rates, and um, he's seeing that this woman is not producing as much as they want since she is with infants. So he signals one of his henchmen to go over to the baby, take it away from the mother, and they measure it on a scale. Um, and there's not really a
Reason
clear
for what the
answer
scale measurement is for.
of what's happening. I
Yeah,
don't know if they're measuring it for meat, or
it
are
could
they seeing
be.
how much milk that this baby has consumed from the mother?
Mm,
Since they're not getting that milk, the baby's getting that milk. They decide to smash the baby's skull into the ground.
yeah.
Um, which when I first saw this was I had never seen anything
That violent with a
happen
yeah.
that quickly, that violent, that unexpected. I was not expecting to see that happen. So
Yeah, when
that
you see something
happens.
like that, you know nobody is safe.
Yeah, they're going deep for it.
Oh yeah.
After that, the landlord and the man leave, and the mom's crying hysterically for the child, as would any mother.
Yeah.
Um, so then we get back and we see Andrew. He's back again. He's actually part of this farm.
Yeah. The guy at the gas
He's
station who directed them,
Yes,
he's, a part of it
he's a part of it, which kind of can take some correlation to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in
with
a
the
sense,
cook in a way. Yeah.
with the cook and his place.
Yeah.
So Andrew's actually one of the only, I think he is the only one that is unmasked besides the
Landlord.
landlord
Yeah.
that you ever see their face.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew actually goes and tries to console her, and be there for her by talking to her like a pet. Like, oh, be a good girl. Like, you're not being a good girl. Um, And of course, I mean, the woman is devastated by what she just saw and had to
Yeah.
experience.
She doesn't
She
want to
is
be hearing
yelling at
any of
him,
that.
calling him sick, and just gross and everything, which, yes, that whole thing is disgusting.
And I think we should
He,
also just point out before we get to this that
yeah,
Andrew does suffer from some sort of mental disability. It is unclear what it is, but
hmm yeah,
he does suffer big time from one of them.
yes, he does.
Yeah.
So he does have a bit of a deficit there. He then proceeds to call her a bad human
Mm-hmm.
because she's not being a good pet. Another one of the masked people come to investigate the dairy farm and find that Andrew had killed the woman. Um, I believe it was with a stick
Yeah.
and some sort. And I don't know if you noticed, but on the stick it said his name.
Oh, it said Andrew on it. Yeah.
It said Andrew on it, which I was also kind of like, why did he put this
Yeah.
in there
Why
afterwards?
does?
Does he just have a collection of sticks? Like, oh yeah, Andrew killed this one. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
That one. It's another confusing thing, but
Yeah. Um, and he kills a woman, and the masked man reports it to the landlord. Um, and the landlord is not too happy with what happened and demands them to find Andrew. So going from there, Nora then discovers while she's in her stall that there is another captive next to her. This woman is being milked directly by a machine, and Nora decides to be like, "Hey, what's going on?" Um, and the woman just says, "Oh, she doesn't want to know," and there's there's no way out of this place. Like, you know, um, the woman explains kind of what's going on with this place, um, and that they were being spied on from the rest stop that they had passed. The woman then tells them about that she's been held at this farm for about 2 years, and that she was bred to the point that she can no longer get pregnant.
yeah. So they
So she is,
so they were
yeah.
going to plan on butchering her since she is no longer of use to them. So they may as well just use her for meat.
So yeah, she's relieved that she won't. She'll be done with it soon. Um, while they're talking, there's another crying voice coming from next to Nora. And the woman explains, "Oh, that's Ashley, who's the only other person that we get names in this movie. That she's also have been there for 2 years." Um, Nora looks over to Ashley and saying that, "Don't worry, like we're gonna get out here. Like we'll make it. Like hang in there." And Ashley's like, "No, it's impossible. There's no way to escape here. They'll always find us."
Mm-hmm.
Now we go back over to uh, the masked men finding Andrew, and he's in the slaughterhouse. And Andrew's kind of just playing around. He's playing with his two new toys that he finds, which are a pair of decapitated
Decapitated heads.
heads.
Yeah.
Um, and Andrew sees them and he's begging them that it wasn't his fault. He didn't mean to kill
Yeah.
the woman.
Yeah. He said she was being mean. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like.
she was being mean, and they drag Andrew back to the landlord. The landlord then tells him like, "Why do you leave? Your post at the gas station. You need to be there, and you need to stop playing with your food." So then he directs Andrew to be placed under supervision by the farm hands, which I don't know if you were also kind of thinking about, but who is at the gas station now if Andrew's not there?
I'm assuming nobody.
The free gas for everybody. So he's placed under the supervision with another farm hand, and it's time for feeding. So they're going around feeding the men in the cages, and Andrew accidentally tips over the food pot completely. And he is completely just fearful of what would happen. So he
Yeah.
decides to just book it.
Mm.
Um, and he heads to the greenhouse where he then brings oregano to the landlord.
Yeah. I think he
Um,
was trying to bribe
who
him so he doesn't end up getting
so
punished.
he's like, "Hey, look, I got you this oregano. Like I didn't just tip
Mm.
over all the food."
Right.
And he accepts it. Um, the other person who was watching Andrew reprimands him, uh, and then is ordered to go, and then orders Andrew to go take care of the woman that can't produce milk. Or
No, Andrew isn't the person who
Andrew's
was
not. Yep,
reprimanding
the
him.
farmhand. I was
Yeah.
like, wait, that just makes
Yeah, I was gonna say Andrew definitely didn't kill that woman. Well, he killed
no.
a woman, not that woman, though.
Yeah, not that one.
But yeah.
Um, so the farmhands head back over to the the dairy barn, and they come up to the woman who previously was on a machine lactating milk, and Nora next door then is watching the farmhands brutally carve and slaughter this woman like a cow
The saddest
right
thing
before
about
her
it
eyes.
is that the woman wanted that. She wanted
Yeah,
to be mercy
she
killed
was like,
so badly. She just wanted the nightmare to end, I believe is
yeah,
what
she
she
didn't
said.
resist at
Yeah.
all. She just kind of was there. She
I
was
mean,
hung up with her arms shackled.
after being there for 2 years, I think I would be in the same boat, you know?
Yeah, just interesting how many people that they actually have gathered over the time and
Oh,
how
yeah.
long they usually stay there. Um, so the butchers leave. Nora slumps back down onto the ground, just in despair by what she saw. But she's kind of curious by a sound at her door. And it's Alec, who is there with his clothes on now. um,
That's always a thing that confused me after I watched the movie is how the heck is Alec there? You know, he was in a
yeah,
cage. How did he get out of the cage? And how did he get clothes back on?
yeah,
And
he's like, I
how
can't
did
be
he
running around naked. I gotta find clothes.
and number 3, how did he find Nora?
Yeah, I
And
don't
how
know how
was
he
he able to
knew all of
sneak
this.
there? Yeah, that's one
I
of the
mean, maybe
plot holes in the movie for me.
there's two barns, and he's like, "Oh, I'm in this barn. She gotta be in that
Oh yeah, easily there's only 2. Yeah, surely.
barn." The two of them then are able to escape the stable, avoiding all of the farmhands, and make their way across the property. Um, and they find a truck, and they get in the truck, and the truck won't start. And now they're forced to keep on moving and find another place to avoid the massed people. They then find a church, and they rest there for a little bit, and notice that there is um, the faces of like Jesus, and his followers are replaced with faces of different farm animals.
And Jesus himself at the front of the church, they put a mask on him as well.
Yeah, so this is for sure being a huge cult
Oh yeah.
community. Um, and then a man in a cow mask guy, he enters the church, heads all the way up to the front, briefly praying at a pew. Which I kind of wish that they delved more into these farm hands to kind of get to know why. What are they praying? What are
What do
they
they get
like
out of
trying to
this?
achieve?
Yeah.
They don't really do that. Um, the
Yeah.
couple then attempts to leave, but are discovered because I believe they make some sort of ruckus of
I
noise.
think there was a door on the or a noise from the door. A door from the
Mm-hmm.
noise. Yeah.
Door from the noise.
Yeah.
So Nora and Alec are fleeing, pursued by the cowman, who just rings the bell, which is conveniently placed, around the area that they were getting caught at,
Right.
which is alerting the rest of the farm. Like DVD, uh, Alec runs and he steps in a bear trap.
Yep.
Um, and Nora and him are trying to open it, but are unsuccessful.
And once Nora
In doing
sees people
so,
approaching, she tells Alec, "I'm sorry," and just runs away without him. And
yeah,
as the farmhands approach, Alec is still there, just stuck in that trap, kind of squirming around like a worm. And so they end up grabbing a nearby rock and just dropping it on his head, killing him
yeah,
instantly.
yeah. That was.
And for some reason, Nora stopped to watch the whole thing happen instead of continuing to run. So,
Mhm,
yeah.
did. Um, so after that scene's happening, Nora um heads to the mail barn, trying to hide behind a wall. And lo and behold, Andrew and the landlord happen to come in.
Yeah.
Um, One of the other captives, in a cage, is um sees Nora and like is trying to tell her like, "Hey, you need to hide. Like they're coming." Um, she runs over to him and begs him to know how to get off the farm.
Mm-hmm.
First off, who was this man? Why would he know how to get off the farm?
Exactly. Like, if he
Uh,
knew how to get off the farm, don't you think he wouldn't be here?
so somehow this man, he's like hesitating a little bit about what to tell her. He's like, "Oh yeah, the farm hands have this bus and they use it to transport the people that they catch." And he tells her where the keys are. I'm like, how does this man know everything? It's kind of a little fishy to me.
Right. Yeah, that's
So Nora makes
again
her way.
another plot
Yeah,
hole. Like how the
yeah.
yeah,
I feel like there was could have been more into the movie, or just restructured the beginning of the movie to fill in these holes later on.
I agree.
Uh, but Nora makes her way out, and there's a parking lot area where several cars are parked. And she sees a masked person with his back turned to her. Um, and I believe he was filling the car up with gasoline or something.
Right.
Like he was in the trunk. Nora has the opportunity to then have this hammer, and she sneaks up behind him and bashes him over the head with the hammer, knocking him out. Right after that, there's three other masked people that then like spot her and are rushing after her to get her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Nora then gets into the car that he was working on and starts it. There was a little bit of struggle to get it to start initially, but of course, just like any other horror movie, she gets it to start at like the last possible moment,
Mm-hmm.
and she's driving off, and she's like, "Yes, finally, I've escaped the farm." And maybe a little bit later, like not even a mile, the car stops and it's completely out of gas.
Right.
So now they are chasing Nora back on foot through the grounds, and she makes her way back to the stables where she frees Ashley. Another part where how does she have enough time to be far enough away from these people to then also free this other girl?
Yeah, exactly. It makes no sense because she was in the car driving for maybe 20 seconds and it was
Yeah,
extremely slow. So it makes no sense to me.
but she does. So then she frees Ashley, and the two women make their way to the bus, only for it to have no keys. Which I'm like, Nora, you knew that there were no keys here. The guy at the stable or in the cage told you where the keys were.
Right.
So she then goes to the house where the guy told her the keys were going to be, and sees the keys through the window on, I think, a table. And she grabs the keys through the window. And then she goes back to the bus. where I'm assuming Ashley was just waiting for her casually or something.
Yeah, she was for
And the
some reason were
two get
just
on the
waiting
bus,
outside. But
and yeah, Nora is happy. She gets on, she sits down in the seat. She's getting the bus ready to turn on, and then Ashley is standing about a quarter of the way through the bus
and
and is
just
like,
stood bewildered. And then once Nora finally
"Oh my
gets,
god!"
yeah, once Nora finally gets the car started, her bus, she turns around and just sees Ashley just standing there. And she looks a bit further back and ends up seeing the bus is filled with people wearing animal masks. And they're just sitting there, just looking at him.
Yeah, like
And
almost every single seat filled.
and then the scene just goes to black. And then we are brought back to see the landlord now donning an animal mask of his own, and it slowly zooms out, and on the table you see Ashley on one side and Nora on the other side, completely cooked into food on both sides of the table, as the landlord and others wearing animal masks just stand looking straight into the camera. It
Yeah,
is
this scene,
a very just interesting ending that I was not expecting.
yeah, the fact that these two girls are now roast pigs,
Right.
apple in their mouth, full on recreating the iconic Last Supper scene um,
Yeah.
from Religion is a very strong way to go out on the movie.
Oh,
And
very.
I don't know whether or not it's rewarding that none of them made it out, or should they have made it out. That, you know, could go either way. But um, that is where the movie ends.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we had so much thoughts about this film, and um, there it is.
There's a
Um,
lot.
there's a lot to go through.
It feels like there's a lot, but not a lot at the same time. It's a weird film.
Yeah, it is very divisive. It's a very um, poorly rated. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
on IMDb, it's a 3.7, and it's 16% on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, there's a lot of people who just
Yeah.
don't like this movie, and I'm sure that we can both agree that this movie has a lot of faults to it.
Oh,
The
absolutely.
concept is really
The
intriguing
concept is
since I
very
don't
interesting.
think, I
Because
mean, we've kind of seen it with the
a
Texas
Texas
Chainsaw
Chainsaw.
Massacre, but I
But
mean,
it takes what the
expanded
Texas
upon.
Chainsaw had and it expands upon it in a way we haven't actually seen in film before. You know, we haven't seen in a movie people using other people as livestock and actually seeing it in the way that the farm was portraying it. Like men being trapped in the cages and eventually, like, I'm assuming they feed them up kind of like a pig, you know, because they were just pouring like food in their troughs. And once they're like fat enough, then they take them and butcher them. And then you have on the female side, like they impregnate them so that they're able to get more lactation out of them. And once they're not able to lactate anymore, or like they're low on supply, or if they can't be impregnated anymore, they're also taken and butchered. So it is exactly just like a farm, but with humans. Like, so they absolutely nailed it on the head with that. My main problem with it is just the way they went about it. You know,
Yeah,
like
I
there's so
mean,
much more that
I,
they could have done with it.
there is a lot that they could have done with it. I mean, I get this is a very much a small, low budget
You all right?
movie. Um, and I mean, there's only like a handful, like I've said before, of actors that are actually named with a lot of background
Mm-hmm.
people. Um, yeah, I mean,
I mean, so Alec and Nora seem to work with the director of this movie a good bit. So I'm assuming they already had good chemistry off the bat, which I'm assuming is good. Um, but unfortunately, the acting really just hurts this movie. Um, especially the acting of Nora. Now, I feel like this actress, she could become really good, but from what I saw in this film, her acting was just not it. It felt very fake. Like her, especially the encounter at the beginning with her on the road with the woman who had a broken down car, then how she was acting in the diner a little bit. Even her interactions alone with Alec just seemed not real.
Yeah, they
And
felt a little disingenuous.
yeah, and
Um,
when she was in the barn with like Ashley and whatnot saying, "We're going to escape," it sounded so generic. It really did. She feels like a generic final girl. And just I don't know. I feel
except she
like it,
wasn't.
well, yeah. Well, technically she was a final girl, like, out of the two,
One of
but
two.
still. But I feel like they could have done so much more. But and then with Alec, like you just have him shown in the cage, and then magically he's fully clothed out of the cage just to save Nora. Like that's all he's used for the remainder of the film. Like you think you'll also see more of like the male side. Like we see a lot of like the female side with the milking and whatnot. You think you'll get a mixture of both of that. Seeing more with Alec. But no, they
Yeah,
just kind of abandoned that part of it just to
yeah.
continue with Nora's storyline
He
that
was
ends up.
only kind of brought back to
Yeah,
get Nora out of this
exactly.
stable.
Like he felt like a real throwaway. Like he definitely had potential. Both of them did, but it just felt really flat on its face. I think the short
Yeah.
runtime also has some contributing factors to why we didn't see a lot of it. But
Hmm.
it just sucks. I wish we could have seen more of that because I feel like there's again a lot of potential with that. And
Yeah.
I also feel like there's so much more we could have seen of the landlord as well. Because other than him having that one phone call, dealing with Andrew, I feel like he didn't really do anything in it. Like we didn't see him do anything. Like when it came to Nora and Alec, like after they end up getting taken to the farm, you never see him interact with them. You know,
Yeah.
and I also feel like Andrew, they could have used him more too. I think it would have been very interesting to see him. You know, maybe like Nora or someone could have persuaded him into him helping them or something. I don't know. Like I feel like there's a bunch of like things that could have done with this movie that they just didn't do. It felt very sloppy in the
Yeah.
farm half because it felt like when you watch the movie, you'll see they just have random shots of sometimes people in animal masks just walking to barns or whatnot. Like we don't need to see that. Wow, they know how to use their legs and get to a barn. We definitely haven't seen that before. I definitely can't go out to the countryside and see that for myself, you know? Um, but I feel like in the second half, especially, like, there really isn't any acting until, like, the climax at the end. It's just walking around and just seeing people in cages, which, it's creepy, but that's all there is, you know?
Yeah. I did want to kind of piggyback off your one point with Andrew and kind of convincing him.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if they had taken a different route with the gas station and had a maybe a more relatable maybe relation or interaction between Nora and Andrew, maybe something like Nora helped Andrew with something at the gas station, like something small that would click him to then associate her with being good. I think that he could have been the one to kind of break or let her out of her stable, kind of eliminating the need to have Alec do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't know if Andrew's already too far gone and Wash
Right.
um, to rely on the landlord. But I'm also interested to kind of further delve into the relationship between the landlord and Andrew and who they are to each other and how he got
Right.
to be there. Um, but yeah, I think we kind of talked about everything that we needed to and our thoughts on it. We're going to kind of go over um, giving a score to different factors of the movie, as well as talking about what our favorite kill and our least favorite kill of this film was. So we'll start off first with what was your favorite kill? I am dying to know. You would not tell me what this kill was, and I need to know what you think.
I think I think the best answer would be to say like the ending with Nora and Ashley because it is a great reveal. But for me, I think in terms of like shock factor, it really surprised me. I think I have to give my favorite kill to the baby getting its head crushed because it was so surprising. Like it's out of nowhere, and it really sets a tone for the rest of the movie. Knowing, you know, you may have had a chance before, like you may have had an idea of like, oh, maybe I can escape through this. Maybe I can convince people. No, they just slaughtered a fucking baby. Like there is no limit to what these people will and will not do. So that for like the traumatization factor as well, I think I have to go with that. Like, is it the most flashy? No, but
No,
like when it happens, I guarantee you nobody goes into this movie expecting a baby to die like that.
yeah, my mouth was full,
Yeah.
ajar for the people who are not watching this live, but my mouth was just wide open. I was sitting there watching it. I was like, "Holy crap!" Like I need to like be like side. I just saw the craziest fucking thing. I saw like I don't know if you remember when I messaged you when I was watching it. And I was like, "You're not ready for this,"
Oh
and
yeah.
you're like,
I'm
I don't even
scared
think I
now.
want to watch it
Yeah.
now. And I'm like, no, you have to watch it. You have to watch it. So
So, what's your
interesting. I didn't. So I would kind of almost piggyback off what you said with the final scene. I think the final scene is shot immaculately. The one thing I wouldn't like, I can't pick that one because it's not something we visually saw happen.
I think if they showed the
Um,
process of them
yeah,
like preparing them as if they were just
like even if
regular
it's like
pigs.
close-up shots or something that we don't know what's happening
Exactly,
or what it
yes.
is to
So
kind
you
of keep that mystery, and then at the end they serve it on
they
the
reveal
plate and
that
they
it's
all
Ashley
gather.
and Nora. Yeah. I think just
Yeah,
having them like preparing something and then revealing that oh, it's the two girls that we were just hoping were going to escape. That would have been amazing, and I feel like it would have been so artistic if they went in
yeah,
that direction of showing that because they
yeah,
we know they can do that because they showed like them flipping burgers and stuff, so we know they can have like a vision of something like that.
yeah,
So
so yeah.
yeah.
But I would say that my top kill was probably the unnamed lactating woman when
Mm,
she was um, chained up because of just the way that she was like ready to take it and just how nasty and kind of gruesome it was with the actual effects of like her intestines and all that stuff coming out and
oh yeah.
flopping into the bucket underneath here. I think that that would have to be the best from the movie.
That's
Now
another
we
really
talked
good
about the
one.
best of the best. Now the worst of the worst.
I mean, I think the worst of the worst, it just has to go to the people that just got the bop on the head with a hammer. It really just has to. I mean, Alex is also kind of disappointing, but like, because we don't see any other bear traps anywhere else. Like, what? There's just one random bear trap where he just so happens to run through.
You know
Okay,
this is Dead by Daylight at its finest. You're gonna run
right.
into that one bear trap. That trapper set on the map.
I do, but the reason I do like that kill as compared to just the hammer is they just drop it on him so
Yeah,
nonchalantly
yeah,
and just keep moving on.
yeah,
It's
no,
it is just treating him like he's just a piece of meat, you know, which is one of the reasons like I don't dislike it the most. I think the
yeah,
lead up to the kill not great. I feel like it's just there to spice it up.
Mm,
You know, it doesn't make any sense for that trap to be there. But
yeah,
the head crush, I think it was greatly done, and it fit like the theme of the farm really well. But just the hits on the hammer, like of characters we don't know or don't really have
yeah,
any care about, that's got to be the worst for me.
yeah. No, I agree. I'd say that they would probably be the bottoms there. We
Mm-hmm.
don't know who they are. I mean, we don't know what happened to them afterwards. We just assume that they were then used for, catering.
Right.
So, yeah, I agree with you there. I think those top kills are pretty great to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're gonna go through and give a 1 to 5 rating for the scare factor, the plot of the movie, the camera work of the movie, acting, the gore, and then finally our final grade. I think we're gonna go with like an A to like an F kind of
Mm.
rating for that. So like starting with the scare factor movie, how scary was this movie for you?
So I know when it comes to scare factor, people think of like a Five Nights at Freddy's kind of like with like a jump scare. That's what people
Yeah, we get none
usually.
of that.
Yeah, we don't get any of that, but I just think like the visions and the idea of it is extremely scary, and it's something that will stick with you and something you will be thinking about, like how crazy and messed up it is. It's a scary thing to imagine. Like, can you imagine if this was something like that was real? Like people treated like livestock? Like that's horrifying to think of. So the idea of it is easily a 5, but with what we see, I'll give it a 4 because I feel like there's more we could have seen. Like we saw the horror aspect with the women, we saw it with the child. We didn't really get any horror aspect other than like, the hammer on the guys' heads. We didn't really get any with the guys. I feel like if we saw more of that, then I would be able to give it a 5. But I'm thinking like 4, maybe a 3.5 is fitting.
Okay, interesting. Now, the way that you were starting off and telling me about your vision for their score kind of helped boost my score up just a little bit.
All right.
You're a really good talker, so I think I'm gonna stick around to like a solid 3.
Yeah.
I find it what you say about the potential of this happening being scary, which I definitely agree with. This would be a pretty scary thing to be happening, but I think with guarding the what we saw of the movie, it didn't make me too scared. It made me more uneasy and
Yeah.
a little queasy about that. So yeah, I'd say that my score for that would be a 3.
Yeah, that's a fair rating for it.
So now we're talking about the plot of the movie. How well do you think that was conceived?
I mean, again, I think the concept of it phenomenal. It piggybacks off of what we've seen in like Texas Chainsaw, like with a cannibalistic family and whatnot, and treating people again like meat. I think it does a really good job of catering off of that. I think it's just
Let's see what
the
you say with catering.
yeah. I think the execution of it just falls flat. So I think in terms of concept, again, it's another 5, a great one that we haven't really seen since Texas Chainsaw. But the way that it was portrayed, we didn't really get to see a whole lot in terms of plot, other than like them using these people for meat. We got nothing with like the landlord really. We get that he's like a catering service in a way, but that's all we get with him. As for Nora and Alec, we get nothing about them as people, and it doesn't really end up going anywhere for them. They are just treated as like any other person we would have seen in that barn, you know? So
Yeah.
I'd say in terms of like the concept of it, it's a 5, but in execution, I think I'm sadly gonna have to give it like a 2.5, maybe a 2. I think it's very poorly executed. I think like the shots themselves inside the barns of like the people being held captured and like the milking and stuff. That's great. I love that. Do more of that. You know, it's very creative. But it's just having these two characters like we end up not even giving a shit about, just ragging on nonstop, and then just for them to be, nothing characters. At least show us more of the landlord. Give us more plot with that. We get really nothing with it. That's my main complaint with it. Which
Yeah,
I'm,
no, I
yeah.
I agree. I think that there wasn't really anything furthermore than the little bit of like story that we got.
Mm-hmm.
So I would definitely agree that the plot is definitely underutilized in what it could have been.
Right.
So a two, I think, is respectfully what it should get. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, maybe even a 1.5, but
Yeah.
how bad? Talking about the camera work and how the whole visuals of the movie look.
I think in terms of camera work, whoever is working the camera, I think did a phenomenal job. I feel like that person is very experienced with doing that kind of work, or has just learned a lot about it and was able to put their knowledge into it. So I think in terms of the camera work, I think it was phenomenal. Like they made like the shots of them just flipping burgers. It looked good. It looked better than anything you see on Food Network in terms of camera work. Um, but I think just the people that were acting in the shots made like take away from like the angles and stuff that people with the camera were doing, you know? Because like you have this scene with Nora and Alec like bickering in the car a little bit. Like no matter how good the shot can be, the acting will make that shot really not matter, and it really takes away from it. But I feel like when you have shots of like, the long shot of like showing all the women in the barn getting milked and stuff like that, where you're not having to like have a scene rely on just these characters. It's a scene that relies solely on the camera work. Because if it's just a scene that has that, but the camera work is dog shit, then the
Yeah,
scene's gonna be dog shit. You know? So I think in terms of that, the camera work is great. But when it comes to like the beginning part of the movie with the acting, not great. I will give it a solid 3.5 though, because I do think the shots in like the whole barn area are done masterfully.
yeah, hmm yeah,
Especially the scene in the barn with Nora and Ashley and all of them, where it's showing Nora just slink down and showing her like peer into the other woman's stall, and the camera
hmm
work of like the kills and whatnot. It's done great.
yeah. I agree. I think the cinematography of the movie and the way it visually looks is pretty impressive for what it ended up being.
Mm-hmm.
Taking out any of the like people within the camera shots and just looking at what it was showing us and how it was trying to show us. I think it kept us on our edge of the seat, waiting to see what was happening next. I think that the camera work was a solid four, and the stuff that they showed us also was
And I want to say
pretty good.
one thing really quick. I think an underrated shot is from the end. And it's not like the Last Supper esque scene. It's on the bus where it shows
Yeah,
Ashley getting onto the bus and shows her like really rushing. And then all of a sudden she just stops and stands there. And I believe it pans up to show her just like frozen.
yeah,
And then it pans over to Nora, who's just excited that the car or the bus has started. And then you just see Nora turn around, and then it just boom, flash shot straight to all the animal masks in the back. I think that is an underrated cinematography portion of the movie.
yeah,
I think it's done
yeah,
really well, and
yeah,
it makes the reveal even better.
for sure. So
Yeah.
I know we talked quite a bit about the acting, so I feel like we kind of have an idea of where we're going with this acting of it. I mean, for me personally, I think there are some people that are strong. There are some that are a little bit weaker.
Exactly.
I'd have to go with like a two. It's a very low two.
Yeah. This might sound kind of like a bit douchey to do, but I'm gonna like give like my score for the main, I guess, six actors. So Nora, her acting in the first half was abysmal. I think her acting during like the grand finale wasn't bad. She seemed genuinely panicked and whatnot. I think that was great. But the beginning half, I it's a one for me. But I think like her in that climax, it brings it up to a two though. As for Alec, I think him being like a supportive kind of boyfriend and trying to help people, he does a good job portraying that. Um, but I feel like him also piggybacking off of Nora, like he doesn't do a great job of that. I feel like when he's interacting with anyone else, he does a better job. Like when he was interacting with the landlord, they did a great job. It generally seemed like this he was trying to be sincere, but it was a really awkward conversation. I'm gonna give Alec a three in terms of the acting. Ashley, we didn't get to see a lot of her, but in terms of the panic and the freaking out, she did great. I'll give her a four on that. But it's not really fair since she wasn't in a whole lot. The
Yeah.
lady was dying and begging for mercy. Five, she played that part perfectly. Um, and the landlord, I'm gonna give him a four because I feel like on the phone call he could have sounded more like an actual human being rather than just a creep fuck, you know?
I mean,
And
he's just a creep dog.
yeah. And the person who played Andrew, I'm going to give them a five as well because they generally played it well. Because I've hung around people that have like mental disabilities a lot, and he does a good job of portraying how some of them act. So I for him I give it a five. I think overall though, I don't want to let the acting of the main two just bring down the score to like a one, you know? So I think the help of the other four actors in it, like the landlord Ashley, um, the unnamed woman, and Andrew, I want to say it brings up to a two and a half. But if we're looking like just Nora and Alec, it's like a one and a half. It's not great. But yeah, that's my gripe on the acting for this movie.
All right, rounding around to the very end, we got the rating for the gore. I'll start off. Um, the gore, there's surprisingly not as much as you would think that a movie like this would have.
Right,
There are shots of blood and people getting sliced, but it's not overly gory like some of her other gore focused movies that's all they're about.
yeah, it's not like Evil
So
Dead.
for yeah, it's not that. So for me for this movie, I would say that it would be a two in terms of the gore. There is gore, there is stuff that is there, but it's just a little bit more tame. Like there
Right,
could have been a lot more with the baby kill. That could have made it overly gory, and I think that would probably made me quite sick to see. But for me, it just has to be around a two.
right. The gore for me, I think, other than your favorite kill, the woman who got carved in the barn, there really wasn't any other than when the hammer struck the guys on the head in the barn and you see the blood on Alec. You don't really see any. I'm pretty sure. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
you
well,
can't name anything.
I guess the woman that Andrew killed, you see a bit of blood too, but like it's very tame in terms of blood. It's not, you know, Terrifier would use more blood than the whole movie did
Oh
in
gosh,
like the first 2 minutes of their movie. You know, like you can watch the beginning of Terrifier 2 in the first 5 minutes, you'll see more blood in that movie than the whole of this. You know, like
yeah.
I think when they do have the gore though, they do good with it. It's not over the top. It does seem more realistic, you know, which I think this movie is trying to go off of. They're not trying to make it seem over the top, you know. They're trying to make it
Yeah.
seem like it's crazy, but making it seem a bit realistic, which I can appreciate. So while the gore might not be like the best in the world, I think it's fitting. But still, if we're ranking it on like gore as a whole, there's not much,
Hmm.
so it's a one and a half. But in terms
Yeah.
of their usage of it, I think it's a four. I
Hmm.
think they did a great job with how they used it.
Yeah. Cool. So that leads to our overall rating of this movie, grade style, um, from the A to the F. Do you want to go ahead and start it off for us?
I think I'm going to give this movie a solid C minus. I was thinking about giving it a D plus, but I think the concept of it really carries it a whole lot. Like just the idea of these people being treated like livestock is just an amazing idea for a film. You know, something we never get to see, and I think this is definitely one of the best depictions of it we have seen. Um, I think the cinematography again was great. The acting, it was kind of 50-50. The gore, while tame, I think they did a good job with how they used it. The scare factor, like just thinking about it, it is scary. It's a scary premise. So I don't think I can rate it too high, but I also don't think I can rate it too low. So I'm just going to put it in the middle as a C minus.
Yeah, and I mean, you read me like a book. I'd have to say it exactly the same, echoing everything that you have said already. I was going with a C minus for it. I mean, I think it's a film. You can watch it. Um, it is, a short film, so I mean, it is something that you can get through fairly easily. Of course, there are some parts in it that are maybe a bit more unsettling for some people.
Yeah.
But again, just like you said, the overall concept of the movie, I mean, it all kind of fit into an average film.
If I'm being honest,
Um,
I think the movie leaves you wanting more, which
mhm,
I think that is a very impressive thing on its own. Because you have like some movies where it's like when it's ending, you're like, okay, I think that was great. But when you have a movie where it's like, I want more, and it's like you really want to find out more about
yeah,
this, and there's going to be a sequel or something, I think that's when you really hit the nail on the head. Because I know like there's like some like Elm Street movies where it's like, this is a great end to the series. Don't make any more. You're going to ruin it, you know?
yeah,
So, you know, I feel like if it had a longer runtime, I know 2 hours may be a bit much, so like an hour and 45 maybe. Like
yeah. I think
maybe
that
the
would be
extra
good.
25 minutes would have made such a great impact on it. So
Yeah.
I do have a question for you. If
Oh,
you could change just one thing, you could only change one thing about the movie, and you had to keep one thing because you absolutely loved it, what would they be?
oh gosh. If I had to change one thing and keep one thing that I love,
Like, what's the thing in the movie where it just stuck out to you and you're like, I love that. I don't want to change anything about that. And the thing about the movie where you're like, I
yeah.
really didn't like this, or I would add this to the movie because it's really just missing this to it, you know?
So I think the thing I would probably change is the meeting the grandma in her nightgown.
Just like completely
Um,
remove it or just add on
just
to
I
it.
think that if they just completely, I mean, I don't even think it built on any character development really of
I,
Nora, other than her being kind of
I,
annoyed.
I can only think of
Um,
one thing from that scene that maybe it was doing a bit of foreshadowing, but
yeah,
like
I mean,
that being with her saying, "Oh, he's not gonna be able to be any good for you," which I mean, he did save her,
yeah,
but he ended up getting killed, and she didn't end up living either. So I mean,
yeah. I think that it just doesn't need to be there anymore. I
yeah,
think they could have
it's really
gotten rid of that,
unnecessary.
and the movie would have been the same.
I
We
agree.
just wouldn't be talking about those weird random in
Yeah.
the road. Um, One thing that I really liked that I wouldn't want them to change. Um, I feel like it just has to be at the end of the movie,
Mm,
just that final shot. I mean, I don't think I could see that movie without seeing that shot.
that's fair.
And what about you?
I think the thing I would change is there's quite a few things I would change to make the movie feel like it had more of an impact.
Yeah,
But definitely the biggest change I would have is giving the landlord more screen time, you know? Because I think he for sure could be a villain that could maybe not be in the Villain Hall of Fame, but someone that is remembered for at least a good bit of time, you know? It's like how John Carver from Thanksgiving, he's not going to be remembered in 50 years. Everybody knows that. He's no Michael Myers. But I think he's a great villain, and he's a villain that will be remembered for maybe a decade, you know? He's a villain people will still talk about. I
Yeah, for
feel
me
like
with John Carver, I don't know if you also had watched the show Grey's Anatomy, but all I
I've
can
seen a
see
bit
is
of it.
him as a doctor. Continue your story.
But yeah, I would just give him more scene time. You know, like I don't know where exactly I would put it. Um, I think.
Honestly, I
Go
don't
ahead.
think that he, based off the way the movie is structured now, I don't think I could even drop him in any other scene.
Mm. I think I would
'Cause I feel
have
like that
him.
he didn't contribute much.
I feel like I would have him be more like antagonizing and be like maybe go and explain what's happening to Nora and Alec. You know, give more
Hmm.
confrontation with the two main characters. I feel like that's something that was really missing. You know,
Okay,
because it feels
yeah,
like the
I could see
landlord
that.
himself he didn't actually do anything to them. You know, sure they're there because they're in his we're in his hotel, but they came there on their own merit. You know, he didn't personally attack them physically. You know, so there
Yeah.
really isn't any confrontation with them other than what you see in the hotel. So that's one of the things I would change. Give landlord more screen time and specifically make it where he's talking with those two. And
Okay, yeah.
I completely agree with you. I think the ending definitely should stay the same. But I'm going to choose something different, you know. So I'm going to say I think the atmosphere is great. The setting, everything around it, it does feel very eerie, but it does feel kind of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre where it's like it feels like a big setting but also feels very secluded at the same time, you know? And I really liked that about it because it did feel like you were trapped with
Yeah.
these people in the barn. And I love any time where you can feel like you're with the characters in a way, where you can
Yeah.
imagine yourself in this situation. So, other than the ending, I would have to give it that to that. But yeah.
Yeah. And since you said that with the whole atmosphere and everything, I was thinking of like these turn of events happen really fast.
Yeah.
It happens all in one like either afternoon, morning.
Mhm.
I'm now I kind of want like there to have been like a night cycle that
Right.
we would have kind of seen some of the farm at night. I think that we could have kind of
Mm.
even brought more eeriness to it. But that is a awesome question, and I'm glad that you asked.
It's yeah, because the way it felt, it could have been like Texas Chainsaw Massacre in a way, where it starts in the day and then they get kidnapped at night, and you see them waking up in the night, and
Yeah,
maybe they're just trapped in there. They don't know where they are. And then
yeah,
as the sun slowly comes up, they awaken to see where they actually are. I think that would
for
have been
sure.
great, or something like that, you know.
Yeah,
And maybe during that time where it shows them in black, maybe you can cut to like the landlord doing some crazy shit, you know? Maybe that's where you could throw him into, you know, while they're just trapped in the dark, they can't see shit, but they're in this cage. Maybe you could just throw him in there, you know, to how about the plot? You know,
yeah,
just an idea.
yeah.
But you know, there's always room for a sequel, and I'm hoping that I'm hoping if Hans does decide to make a
We'll
sequel,
write him a letter
yeah, I'm hoping that if he does decide to make a sequel, he will improve so much on it because I he really does have potential. If he came up with this idea on his own, then I would love to see what else he's able to come up with in the horror genre.
for sure.
But yeah, I think that's all I really have to say about the film.
About the farm.
Hmm. But yeah,
All right.
I
Well,
I will say lastly, I do recommend watching The Farm. While it
yes,
might be a bit sloppy at times, it is definitely something you won't forget. It is
yes.
extremely messed up.
And the farm is currently available, streaming on Peacock as well as on Tubi, for your viewing pleasures.
Mhm.
So wrapping up our final segment, which I'm just springing on you, is a cool segment that I like to continue to introduce called a Dead by Daylight killer concept. And our
Okay.
first killer we're bringing into the fog is the landlord.
Oh, okay.
So, with this killer concept, we are bringing his realm of the farmstead, which I think would be a really fun map to
You
play
could add
on with
on to
multiple
Coldwind with it, yeah.
barns and church and all of that. The landlord will be fitted with his rusty hook as his weapon,
Ooh, okay.
with his power being the tenant trap. The landlord will thrive on capturing survivors and creating fear through control. His ability will revolve around setting traps and forcing the survivors into positions of vulnerability. He'll have a few different abilities within this power. His main ability being the lethal lease. The landlord will place a lease trap on the map, where the survivor who triggers this lease is tethered to it with a ghostly chain for a short duration. While tethered, they are slowed by 20% on any other interactions, such as
Wow.
repairing generators or healing. Um, the tether can be broken early by performing a skill check, however.
Hmm.
His special ability being the eviction notice. After a lease trap is triggered, the landlord gains the ability to teleport to the trap's location within 5 seconds, instantly breaking the tether and forcing the survivor into a hindered state. His passive ability will be territorial control. Survivors within the vicinity of a lease trap, untriggered, experience an auditory hallucination of doors creaking or chains rattling, making it difficult to pinpoint the landlord's actual position.
Hmm.
His three perks are late fees. Any injured survivor repairing a generator suffer from a 10, 12, or 15% speed penalty. If they let go of the generator, they will also scream and reveal their location.
Hmm.
No vacancy. When a survivor vaults a pallet, or window, or pallet within your terror radius, the vault location becomes blocked for 6, 8, or 10 seconds.
Would that be a good one?
Finally, foreclosure. When you hook a survivor, the generator with the most progress begins regressing at 100, 150, or 200 speed for 10 seconds. This effect stacks if multiple survivors are hooked.
Hmm.
As Mori, he will be looming over a survivor, hooking them with his rusty weapon, dragging them to the ground. He produces chains wrapped around their neck and tightens it mercilessly while staring into their eyes. As the life leaves the survivors, he coldly mutters, "Rent stew." The realm, the farmstead, is a sprawling, eerie farmland with decrepit barns, silos, and overgrown fields. The primary landmark is a dilapidated house surrounded by livestock pens, creaking gates, and rusted machinery, literally environment offering plenty of hiding spots and an unsettling atmosphere.
Hmm.
So, would you want to bring a landlord to DVD?
I think his power would be interesting, but his perks would be just, oh my gosh, competitive Dead by Daylight would be a mess if those were added. um, but I think he would be interesting. I think the problem with him is that we just don't know a whole lot about him. You know, it's not like a killer like Dracula, where you know a shit ton about him. You know,
Yeah,
but to be fair, I think you could also say that is a good thing for the landlord. You know, the fact you
sure.
don't know a lot about him makes him creepier because you don't know what he's capable of fully.
Yeah.
So I would say, and I want to add on
Also,
to that
bring anyone
idea.
to DVD.
I want to add on to that idea though.
Oh,
With
yeah.
the killer's power, you could treat him kind of like Pyramid Head, in a way you send them to a cage, but instead it's like one of the little pet cages. I think that would be very interesting.
Or you can just make him the knight and just have his little farm hands go out and do the things for you.
Yeah, I think if you have them affected by some sort of thing, you're able to lock them in a cage, and a survivor would have to, instead of like taking like the second to unhook, it'll take like 5 to 10 seconds for them to unlock the
Doing like a
cage.
Yeah, kind of
I
like the
think
pigs traps.
yes, I think if that were the case, that'd be so cool. So, do I think he would be interesting? I think he would be interesting to have in the realm. I would personally like for him to be in there. If he's like how you said, then yeah.
Yeah, I think that his perks are definitely very interesting and nothing that we have currently exactly in DVD.
Right.
Um, so I think that those would be fun. And I mean, I love DVD and I love any
Right.
licensed IP killer. So I mean, I will always be like, yeah, give me more killers. I'll
Right.
spend more money on it. I don't care. Of course, we could, probably see Nora as a potential survivor. Maybe the entity took her right before she was actually roasted, and maybe that's a subby dubbing for her, and she's actually alive somewhere.
Right. Or it could be Alec right before he
But
got his head crushed.
yeah, but of course, I feel like more of a
Yeah.
standalone killer himself. But
Like
that's
Ghostface.
our undead by daylight killer
Yeah.
concept for the landlord.
That's a really good.
Um,
I wasn't expecting that.
I'm glad that you were expecting it. I like to be the unexpected when it comes to you, but I think that the it's fun to just kind of add on to keep with our love of Dead by Daylight
Oh
and
yeah.
including that with our love of horror. So,
Speaking of that, I need to log
yeah,
on to get my daily blood points.
yeah. Do you have any last comments or anything that you'd like to make before we, head back into the ground?
I would like to say I think just for the film itself, I think if it had a bigger budget than some of the things we probably suggested, probably would have been able to happen. But with only 5 million budget, there's so much you can do, you know. But with that being said, I think it's still a pretty solid film that I think is a great way to waste 80 minutes.
Yeah, if you got some friends around and you guys want to just hang out, grab, some pizza and some popcorn,
Oh, it's a
chill
great movie to
out.
show to shock your friends.
I mean, I think that this is a really good one to kind of just hang out and, you know, watch. I mean, from I haven't watched it for such a long time, but I knew of this movie just from the poster itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm glad that we finally got to watch it. I'm glad that we finally got to sit down and have a full discussion about this movie and how weird, wacky, and wild it is.
I agree.
Um, so yeah, I think that this is where we say sayonara. We're gonna head back into the ground, and be reburied once again. Until next time, I have been Austin,
And I have been Cameron.
and we have been here. Thank you all so much, and we will see you all, or we will be in your ears very soon.
All right.